Does he? It is. It is on. It's on. You hear it? Hello. 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 It's on. It is on. Oh. Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Welcome everybody. It's nice that you're here. I'm Nanette LaFours, and good afternoon. We hope that you've gotten your folders and you have your food. We're going to start right now because we value your time, and we want to be done around 2 o'clock. I'm a co-founder of Advocates Against Hunger, serving Norristown and Montgomery County. I was a person who is a member of the Lower Providence Presbyterian Church and on the serving team, actually. And we are part of the community interfaith pantry in Norristown, and I believe that Kathy Van Horn is here, as she's the pantry director there. But we're so appreciative of you making the time to be here to focus on the issue of food insecurity in Montgomery County. We lift up the many who experience food insecurity, and we want to take a moment to think of the people that we serve. Bill calls them cousins, and I think we look at them as neighbors, but these are individuals who do face food insecurity many times every day. And we just want to recognize them and at this time with a special candle lighting. Thank you very much. So this is a presence with us to really think of the people that we're trying to help and serve within our communities. And I think their presence is very important for us to be mindful of that. We've had a wonderful lunch, and we want other people to have that same sense of food security in their life. So if you're here, that means you care. And I have a friend, Aziz Natu, and he talks about compassion. So it's being caring and having compassion for others that's so important. One of the things you have is this little booklet, and it has different things inside. One is the agenda. It has the history of advocates, and it also has a survey. So it's very important for us to have the feedback from you that after this time and session together, that you can tell us what you need to see in further group times together. So unfortunately, First Lady Teresa Ellis was to be a presenter, but she had a medical emergency and a death in the family, and so she was unable to be with us today. But she and Bishop Ellis, Wayne Ellis, Father Schwank, Father Chris, my husband, Carrie LaFours, have been instrumental in terms of the revitalization process for advocates. And you, if you're here, are part of that too. So we so appreciate St. John's for providing this space. We want to say a special thank you to Cheryl Werkheiser here at St. John's, who's the administrator, and all that she does to help, and to Bill Rinker, and to Terry Stone with the Cecil and Grace Bean Soup Kitchen, and their board, and their volunteers. And Bill has volunteered to provide a tour of the soup kitchen after this time together. So if you'd like that, Bill is in the back table there. So I'm so very happy to introduce Father Chris to you.
Good afternoon. As Nanette said, I'm Father Chris. I'm the pastor to the local community here at St. John's. We have a lot going on our campus, but I'm here with the local parish community. And on behalf of our bishop, Daniel Gutierrez, and of our parish community, welcome to St. John's. We're happy to host this gathering of advocates against hunger here at St. John's as part of our parish's commitment to our mission, and that's simple: to love God, love neighbor, and love Norristown. Everything that we do comes back to that mission. And to share a bit, just a tiny bit about our community here and our campus. While St. John's was the first church built in Norristown, the oldest church, founded in 1812, our current community has been around for about 5 years. So we're the oldest and the newest church in Norristown. The historic over 200-year-old parish closed in 2015. And it's really been an instance of resurrection around here since our reopening in 2018. We're now home to the bishop and the offices of the Diocese of Pennsylvania, covering Montgomery, Philadelphia, and 4 other southeastern counties. But more importantly for us here, we're home to a small, growing congregation that's entirely local to Norristown. We speak 4 languages between us. We represent 7 different countries of origin, of birth, and we span the entire socioeconomic scale. So many of the questions we're here to follow up on from our last conference and to ask for the first time here are really relevant just to the day-to-day experience of our own parishioners. We've been happy to host advocates twice now, and we're grateful to Nanette and Carrie LaFours, the driving force behind advocates, for their ministry and their work on food insecurity. Thank you. I want to shine a spotlight especially on the 2 organizations housed right here on our campus, and I believe we have some representation from them today. The Grace and Cecil Bean Soup Kitchen, housed just downstairs from where we're sitting right now. Terry and Bill are here from the Grace and Cecil Bean Soup Kitchen, and Nanette mentioned them earlier. We are also home to the Norristown Hospitality Center. The Hospitality Center is a day shelter for those experiencing homelessness, and they provide hot breakfast, social services, basic health care, housing, and employment assistance, a lot of good work with our neighbors experiencing homelessness. And the kitchen, I believe, is Norristown's most active free kitchen. We have breakfast on the weekends, lunch during the week, and numerous dinners throughout the month. That's a whole coalition of faith-based groups and volunteer groups that help us provide those meals. So we thank you so much for your service here at St. John's. They both do such great work to combat poverty and food insecurity. I'll also recognize a newer partner to the St. John's community. Today's catering is provided by the Montgomery County Bar Association Cafe. I call them Norristown's best kept secret. Not a lot of people know about them. Lee and Lisa, who run the whole operation, are just lovely. And if you're ever here in the downtown area around breakfast or lunch, they're just 2 blocks up Erie Street. A lovely, quiet place to stop in and have one-on-one meetings. So please do stop there if you ever get the chance. And finally, I'll recognize our in-house team member, Cameron Davis, here with us, who's taking care of streaming and recording of our time together today. So we'll be able to consult all the discussion that we have at this meeting afterwards. Cameron is one of several digital disciples, we call them, in the Diocese of Pennsylvania. And they work as a team right here on our campus together with our Diocesan Media Center, which is just upstairs from the Hospitality Center. And they support all of our local churches in our diocese in doing ministry in the 21st century, fully incorporating online and digital media into the way we share the gospel. So Cameron, thank you for your support and your presence here today. By way of closing, I'll just add that most of us here in our small new parish community, only about 5 years old, most of us know what it's like to go hungry. Nanette lit a candle, but it's worth mentioning too, that we're meeting in sacred space that is dear to so many of the people that we're here to serve. And so as a matter of lived experience here at St. John's, we believe deeply in Jesus' commitment in the gospel to the poor, the homeless, to children, and to the hungry. As a priest, it's been my privilege to be a part of that commitment here at St. John's for just over a year now. At this meeting right here, I'll be happy to speak a bit later about some of Advocates Against Hunger's core objectives and offer some questions to help us think about next steps and ways to move forward as a coalition. And so to finish up, if you've been to St. John's before, welcome back. If this is your first time with us, a special welcome to you. And if you need any help getting around, the restrooms are just out this door to your left, around the corner. There's also one available at the entrance you came through. And you're welcome to just tap me on the shoulder with any questions. I'll be happy to give a tour also of our church, and I'm happy to wait for the tour of the soup kitchen as well, if you'd like to see it. It's really worth seeing. It's a beautiful old architecture. Happy to share that with all of you. Finally, thank all of you for your important and incredible work here in Norristown that you're already doing. Thank you for being here today, and I will turn things back over to Nanette.
Thank you. And I'm here actually to introduce the Reverend Helen M.C. Jones, who is with us. And Helen is an amazing person. She is of the Trust Hope, a licensed chaplain, counselor for the Norristown Police Department, a leader for the Norristown Night Out, a grief counselor, and who has been a partner in this revitalization of Advocates. And she'll be guiding the introduction.
My. Thank you, beloved. Hello, everybody. I always tell people, you want to know more about me, Google me. So I'm here just to make sure, find out who's here. So if we will start none other than this table back here, I just want you to, I only have 10 minutes, really 8, because she did 2 minutes of that. If you just stand, say your name and your agency. I'm Terry Stella, Cecil and Grace. Amen. Hold up before you stand up. We heard everyone else. Now, we need you to use that outside voice so people up front can hear you. Yes. That's what I'm talking about.
Bill England here for us, Advocacy Coalition.
All right. Registration table. Ta-da! Popcorn. Amen.
Cheryl Werkheiser, St. John's Diocesan Center.
Amen. Father Chris, St. John's Church at Diocesan Center.
Susan Seeger, Catholic Baptist Children's Learning Center, and Stewart
Thank you all for being here this morning. You make this what it is to be, and we thank God for each and every one of you.
Thank you so much. So, Advocates is a coalition and that works together to promote community dialogue on hunger and nutrition in the Norristown area. And there are 5 coalition regions by geographic location. There's a resource table in the back, and it lists those 5 regions, 5 coalitions for the regions. On January 25th, we were able to have our first coalition meeting after COVID. It had been a difficult time, I think, for all of us, and we realized the impact of COVID on of all of our organizations. So we were able to reconvene as a group, and we were able to complete a survey, and that is in your folder packet. And what it was, basically, to summarize it, is you gave us affirmation that the coalition was worthwhile to reconvene and to work together to really make a difference in the Norristown area and to work with other groups on food insecurity. So the other thing was the emphasis on partnership. And we learned that there are a lot of changes for the county. One primarily change is the different commissioners and how important our elections are and the voting that we have to do as a community. And we thank all those government representatives here today, and we thank them for the service to our community, and particularly their staffs. Amy's back there too. And we wanted to certainly say thank you for all that they've done, because I think Norristown survived the COVID, and it was through the county and all of the people pulling together to make a difference. So the Montgomery County Food Policy Council is now under Dr. Tamara Williams, and she's the executive director of the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. And this is with the continued support of the County Commissioner's Office. And Dr. Williams, she is not able to be here. I thought she would be, but Sam Applefield. And Sam, can you stand up for us again? He is the new director of the Montgomery County Food Policy Council. And so we're really thrilled to have you with us. Thank you so much. So Advocates' mission is to coordinate efforts in the greater Norristown area, to educate the community about hunger, to promote increasing resources and volunteer opportunities, and serve those in need with easily accessible, nutritious food. Advocates' vision is the greater Norristown area will become a hunger-free community. So food is medicine, and nutrition is very critical. That we as a community want people to not only have food, but quality food, so that we are able to really sustain them, to really help them live a better life. And looking at food safety and how we do better in delivering the food that we provide is very critical in that part. So one of the things about Advocates funding is we are just a volunteer group. And the Montgomery County Foundation, Inc. has been our fiscal sponsor. And I want to say a particular thank you to Virginia France, who's the president and CEO of the Montgomery County Foundation, Inc. And we cannot thank them enough. Advocates would not be a part of this without their help. So we really are profoundly grateful for the part that the foundations have played in this process. We also, could you stand up, Virginia, one more time? I don't think people appreciate how much she's been able to accomplish for us. And thank you so much. So forming partnerships has been an objective of Advocates. In light of this, we would like to introduce Lisa Heverly. And Lisa, I know you stood up before, but could you stand up again for us? Thank you. Lisa is the executive director of Operation 143. Lisa and her organization are in Pottstown, but provide a food backpack outreach to families in the Norristown area, as well as 5 other school districts. And Advocates has long sought to provide a food backpack program for Norristown area. And Operation 143 is already implementing this. So should and can Advocates partner with an ongoing outreach rather than reinventing the wheel program? So we want to look at the future and how we partner to really bring a substantial backpack program into the Norristown area. And so people don't really appreciate the emphasis and the need in child hunger. It is a significant issue for us. But partnerships include working with the SHARE food program and pantries. And Carla Clanahan is here. Can you just stand up again, Carla? So SHARE has done a lot in terms of pantries and addressing hunger in that regard. Additional partnerships are with the foundations that we mentioned, the Montgomery County Foundation, but also Emma Hertz is the executive director of HealthSpark, and they've provided funding for the Build Back Better program to bring lead emergency food organizations and the Montgomery County government together to address the county's emergency food system. At the state representative level, there are those who supported addressing food insecurity. Matt Bradford, Joe Webster, and the newly elected Greg Scott. And most appreciated are the Montgomery County Commissioners and representatives, and a sincere thank you again to the staffs. Valley Forge Tourism and Convention Board has an annual food drive, and they work with the MON each year. The Interagency Council of Norristown, which Advocates is a member, that's the ICN. Within Montgomery County, there's the TCN, which is the Community Network in Pottstown, and there's the Bucksmont Collaborative in the greater Lansdale area. So what we try and do is not everybody can attend these meetings, so as Advocates, we belong to the ICN, and we distribute that information we get from them to you. So if you don't like those emails, tell me to stop, but I'll be doing that this coming year. So we are better together. We want to come together and do better. And it's that partnership that is key for Advocates. We are looking to partner with additional groups such as faith groups and the county business community and the county community farming groups such as Greener Partners. They're here today. Can you stand up? Greener Partners are a group. We hope to interface more with them and be able to work more closely to provide quality, nutritious food. And we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Also, there's a Garden of Hope that's in the county. And people don't realize that Montgomery County has a large farming community. And so it's really trying to support those businesses and entities and working with them. And I think Martha's Choice has also a component for fresh and nutritious food. And it's a very positive step in the right direction. But a special partner has been the MON. My husband, Kerry LaFours, was Advocates representative to the MON for many years. He, because we're getting a little older, just has left after, I think, many years. Sorry, honey. But the MON has been provided much support and direction. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Amanda Musselman, who is the MON Executive Director, and Jillian Heckert-Mitchell, the MON Innovation Director. She and her staff have been meeting with other coalition organizations in Montgomery County. And I put in your folder one of those meetings, the minutes of the meetings. But the MON has an example of how these other coalitions have met and what some of their discussions are. And so I mentioned the 5 regions geographically located. And the MON has this innovation through prototypes, strengthening the food security safety net system grant program, and we'll be having a September 21st Hunger Action Summit at the Montgomery County Community College. And I really encourage you all to attend that summit on September 21st. So, and we thank them for providing today this wonderful MON Survey interactive experience. Because when Teresa was unable to be with us today, Helen and the MON really stepped in to help make this program a meaningful time and an interactive time. So with no other words from me, here may I introduce Amanda and Jillian.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Amanda, and I'm from the Montco Anti-Hunger Network. It's great to see everyone here today. I know sometimes it can be challenging to take a couple hours away from the desk, but it just means so much to us that we're all here interfacing today. Jillian is going to go out and pass out some worksheets, but I just wanted to share a couple of quick words about the Hunger Action Summit. This will take place on Thursday, September 21st at Montgomery County Community College. There will be 2 sessions. The morning session is anchoring around education, around promising practices. Lisa will actually be presenting at the conference, talking a little bit more about what she's doing in her own network. And in the afternoon, we're launching action teams. And these action teams are really focusing on challenge areas moving forward. There were 6 areas identified by MON network areas that were primed for solution. And we are going to use some of the feedback here at today's coalition meetings and others to help situate that conversation at the Hunger Action Summit. So I'll let Jillian take over for this afternoon session.
Hello, everybody. So we're going to work through in your groups here. We're going to work individually first, then in pairs, then as like a 4-4 model, and then we'll have a group discussion. The biggest challenge areas that we see are across the network and across the county are data and evaluation, building public and political awareness to end hunger, consistency and coordination of nutritious and culturally appropriate foods, consistency and coordination of funding, resources to support organizational development, and consistency and coordination of wraparound services. So take about 2-3 minutes, and we're going to go individually find out which one resonates with you most from the list above, and we'll spend about 3 minutes doing that right now.
We identify an area, a challenge area that's relevant to the work of your organization.
This is the 1-minute warning for the individual. Okay, so now we're going to pair up, find a partner at your table, and discuss what resonated with you and what resonated with them, if it's similar or different, and just talk about it. This is the 1-minute warning for the pairs. All right. We're going to move into, yeah, I know. We're going to have a break for a second. And we're going to hopefully, if everybody could stand up and find 2 or 3 or 4 other people that they have not talked to yet and move to a different table and have the same conversation. This is your 1-minute warning. All right. Sounds like we had some great discussion. We're going to open it up to the group now. So is there anything that you guys discussed in your groups, your teams, individually that resonated with you? Are there any bigger challenge areas that we did not capture? Does anybody want to talk? You want to share?
I can start us off. Well, in my first conversation, we spoke a bit about data sharing. I was with Kathy Van Horn, who runs a food pantry, and a lot of her comments were focused around sort of the lack of data sharing in that we don't know who's accessing what services where. And so that was something that came out of the first conversation. My second one kind of focused on the second piece listed in the handout, which is building public and political awareness to end hunger. And we just spoke about some of the demographic realities that make that component a little difficult. I was speaking from the perspective of just the demographic makeup of our church community, where many people are unable to access the political process due to their documentation and such. And so how do we bridge those gaps, given that so many of those folks are the people who need resources in the way of anti-hunger? And just balancing that at a county-wide level, where other communities, apart from Norristown, Pottstown, Lansdale to a lesser extent, may not have the same kind of demographic makeup and face the same kind of struggles as places like Norristown. So I thought two really good insights, things that could use a little work.
Thank you. Anybody else want to share anything?
We were talking a lot about the need for funding, so consistency and coordination of funding and different funding sources, and then also tied into that is this political will. So 2 leads to 4, which then fundamentally leads to 6, about all the different services apart from food security measures. But we were talking about, how do you acquire the money that you need to run an organization and an operation, and then how to have money and not be beholden to the organization or the governmental entity that provides that money, but then also the balance of, if you have this great volunteer community or you have these great partners, how do you not kind of exhaust them by asking them for money? But it's important to get those potential donors in to see the work so they know exactly where their money is going, and they adhere to the mission and they believe, and you've got this great group of people. But yeah, where does funding come from is a big part of the conversations that we had.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, thank you guys for helping us with this and working through all of these. And Amanda's going to say something.
And I just want to end on a final comment here. I just want to thank everybody for having these conversations, making sure we are targeting our resources to the correct challenge areas. And if you really enjoyed this conversation today, I strongly encourage you to attend the Hunger Action Summit. And if you have the time to give 8 hours to MON on a Thursday, which I know is a lot, but if you do, in the afternoon, we're launching the action teams, and they're gonna charter each of these 6 different challenge areas. And the great thing about all this is a part of our recovery office funding is we do have money to put towards solutions. So some of the great ideas, the solutions, the strategies, that statement, guiding star principle, we can potentially fund and actually bring a solution. And I know many of us are feeling it. We're at the very end of a rich resource environment. We're seeing the effects when things are going away. We're seeing the need arising, and the time to act is really now. And if you have any time to put towards this, I really welcome you to come. And if now's not the right time, please come back at another time and join us for these important conversations.
Okay, thank you very much. Are you finished, Jillian? We want to thank the MON for hosting this part of the discussion. We wanted it to be interactive and to hear your voice and to really understand from your perspective, because many of you are on the ground, what I call a street level outreach, and really trying to help individuals who are struggling with food insecurity. So it is working together, and I'm going to hand this over to Father Chris, and he's going to help us through this next section. But thank you so much, and particularly for filling in when we were kind of at a crisis point. It was very good. Thank you.
Hand these to you to pass out what I mentioned. Is there any will for a brief facilities break? Yes. Okay, let's go ahead and take 5 minutes. We'll resume at 1 o'clock. Sure. Yeah.
those are the people we work with. So let me introduce myself.
Hi, folks. We're going to.
It's time to stop.
Hi, folks. We're going to go ahead and resume here in about 1 minute. This is a 1 minute warning on conversations. Thank you.
I'm pretty sure Haas is also. Are they on our team? I think they're on our team. I think they've never placed it.
All right. If I could have just a few more moments of your attention, we'll wrap up. All right. I've been asked by Nanette and Carrie to present on just briefly on the historic objectives of Advocates Against Hunger, and to help all of us as attendees of this conference and as members of Advocates to come together in conversation to lay out just an area or two or three where Advocates can best focus its attention as a coalition. As Nanette mentioned already, unlike some of the other players in the wider Montgomery County area, one of the unique things about Advocates Against Hunger is that it's an entirely volunteer operation rather than a 501c3 nonprofit with a paid administrative staff and priorities that get set by a board. This is really about being a coalition, bringing as many people together in the room as we can to dissolve competition and foster collaboration instead. So it's important to name that Advocates is really only as strong as the players that are in the room with us. I think you'll see that reflected in the main objective that's named on your agenda, and it says that Advocates acts as a convener of those already addressing food insecurity in the Norristown area to share ideas, best practices, and resources. And it's funny that Bill made the comment that he did. When I think back to the last Advocates conference that we held here at St. John's, one of the main moments in my memory was during the Space for Community Dialogue, and he aptly said another time, break down the silos, right? And I think that that is our task here as we think of our objectives and a way forward. So we just want to gather folks together to try and chip away at the walls that are put up between our different parties and organizations to address food insecurity. So with that in mind, we're going to pivot now to a time for a little bit more open discussion. We'll keep it brief. We want to be respectful of all of your time. But we're hoping to provide a bit of structure and recording measures so that we can make note of what comes out of the discussion. And of course, we are thankful to Amanda and Jillian for the dialogue we've already had on some of the challenge areas concerning food insecurity. And Advocates would like you to bear those same insights in mind when you're having these discussions. So at this time, I believe Nanette already distributed a quick handout with some questions for discussion there. We'll keep it pretty unstructured, but you should have also found some writing utensils available at your table. So just a show of hands briefly, is anyone seated at a table where only one party or organization is represented? Great, we're in good shape then. So as everyone starts to look over that handout that you received, I'll walk you through some of the key questions here. The first one, and a very important one, is do you see a need and value for the revitalization of Advocates to continue? And if so, does your organization plan to be a part of that as a representative to Advocates so that we can continue working in partnership? The second one, how do we better work together to address food insecurity locally and throughout the county? Could that look like a county food policy conference, a concerted effort, you know? How do we form partnerships and not competitive, duplicative efforts? How do we provide a broader discussion of food insecurity to include soup kitchens, community dinners, child hunger, and pantries? How do we increase participation of those left out of the current system, like folks who are in their riper years that may need programs like Meals on Wheels? And finally, just what is possible for consolidation? How do we work together to support local farmers to provide fresh produce rather than just processed food options, and really improve nutrition as we meet the need of food insecurity? And how do we work with a variety of local foundations and encourage the business and healthcare communities and the faith community to be involved in these solutions? So you'll see that these key concerns have been divided into two categories or sections on that handout, if you will. One of those is labeled required. I think these are kind of the existential questions for advocates as a convening group. And that's simply to name that these are the most important answers for advocates to be able to move forward from here as they pursue next steps for the coalition. The other one is labeled at will, and that's simply to give those at your table the discretion to answer the questions that best apply to the work that your group does. So for our first few minutes, we'll cap it probably at 5 to 7 minutes. We kind of want to repeat the same structure we just used. We want to just invite a one-on-one conversation. That's ideally with someone from a different organization than you, but if your table arrangement isn't as conducive to that, it's okay to speak with a coworker or someone from your own party. So while you don't need to write anything down for this part, we ask that you take a mental note of some of the key insights to report back to your wider table before we report to the wider group. So are there any questions about that? Just a one-on-one conversation around those first 3 required questions and any that stand out to you in the other category. We'll take 5, 6, 7 minutes. Since it appears that most are already having group conversations, why don't we go ahead and leave just 3 or 4 more minutes, and then we'll move straight into reporting back to wider group. One minute warning. 1 minute. Let's go ahead and start wrapping up, please. It is. All right. We're going to go ahead and move forward with our discussion. I don't know if you can. Let's go ahead and move forward with discussion. So, did anybody not participate in a table-wide discussion? Have we already moved into that stage kind of naturally? Okay. All our tables were talking with one another. And so rather than move into yet another section of discussion, I think it would be most helpful for us to move into group reporting. I see some scribblers over here. I know you'll take some decent notes of what we share, and we'll have the recording to consult as well. But if one person from each table would be able to just comment on those required questions, those existential questions of advocates, and also any other insights that came out from the other questions. So we'll go table by table. And Cameron, are we good to use the mics that are on the tables? Okay, cool. So do we have a mic at the back table there? Or we can snag one? There we go, perfect. There we go. You may have to flip it on.
Fair. Hello. Is this on? I'm on. I'm on. Very funny, Terry. So I can speak to as far as we had gotten in our conversation, which is our shared, somewhat of a shared mission in, well, ours is building community through access to healthy food. And Grace Cecilian Soup Kitchen was explaining, their ultimate vision is 3 hot meals a day in Norristown to get to the point where that's the state of affairs for people who need food in Norristown. And we at least landed upon that. I believe that's as far as we had gotten. And we also landed on an obvious need to be working together in order to achieve that. Our conversation veered a bit into the logistics of how we can direct people to find those needs. We were looking a little bit through the resource guide here. That's as far as we had gotten.
Excellent, thank you.
Sure.
Why don't we move to the next table forward, our third row of tables from me. And there's a mic right in the middle of the table, too.
I couldn't see.
Am I? Oh, there you go. Our table, we didn't get very far because I think what we really stressed was partnership and what does that look like in the county and how can that be better, how can we better serve the county through partnership? It's almost like there's a lot of heads and it's confusing to people in the county who is in charge of what. And so most of all of our conversations surround it, like who's in charge and what does that look like across the board. Am I missing anything about that? I think it's really just I think a lot of the questions talked about the need for this type of meeting with the Advocates Against Hunger, and then what does this look like for the coalition meetings that are happening, and then where does MON fit in? Where do we all fit in? And how do we strengthen those partnerships to be very clear to the community and to other organizations who's in charge of what and how does it all fit together? That's it. That's as far as we got.
Thank you. I think that certainly touches on several of those key questions at the top. Do we want to move to the next table forward? I believe there's a mic in the center of that one.
Hello. I just wanted to respond to something that was just said, which is that on behalf of the grassroots people, I've always been befuddled by all the different agencies and the levels of people and who do we. So thank you for trying to get yourselves organized. Further organized. Secondly, I want to thank Montgomery County Foundation in Virginia for a wonderful meal. It always amazes me how well we are fed when we talk about food insecurity, right? And Tammy had said something earlier about, back at the first conversations, about we don't know where to send people. If people, I mean, we're dealing with Soup Kitchen or Food Pantry, but if they need other services. So the fact that all this needs to be better coordinated is something that really strikes home with us. And there was another thing, and I just forgot it. Oh, I know. I wanted to ask, I know Hospitality Center's not here today, right, I think, but so that would be where other services could be found. That Tammy and I only know to send people to the Hospitality Center. So my question is there any expansion plans for Hospitality Center? And if you go with 3 hot meals a day and you're right next door to the Hospitality Center, do they stop with meals? Breakfast?
They've done they used to do one weekend, one Saturday. And so we always did a meal on a Saturday for lunch, and they were doing a different week. But now I understand that's possibly they're doing all 4 weeks. So we look into things like, we're going to have discussions with them on, okay, maybe we want to stop this lunch because we're seeing so much less people at lunch because they're down at the transportation center and they're serving lunch and giving out clothing and stuff. So then we've got to pivot and say, okay, can we possibly add another dinner where there's no dinner? So that's what I mean by backfilling meals. Again, I'm not going to compete against you or against you or against you.
I don't think it's necessarily competing because we were having that issue. You guys or hospitality would always do something on a Friday, and all we said was let us know so we wouldn't cook as much. So
we don't do anything on Friday.
Yeah, it wasn't a matter of competing, but just to let each other know so we'll know how to prepare. That's all.
Right, and we don't do anything on Fridays. Now, I have to admit, the Valley Forge Convention Center, Convention Bureau, they're doing this big meal on this Friday, but this is like once a year. Right, that's the whole silo thing. Well, that's the whole silo thing.
And I think that's kind of a good circle back with the MON. Their very first area of concern was data sharing, right? How can we centralize the exchange of that information? And so I'm glad we were able to pull that insight forward. To answer the question of whether Hospitality Center plans an expansion, currently I'll just plug their fundraising 5K they do every year. If your organization is able or in a fiscal position where you could help them expand some of the services that they offer, they are actively recruiting folks to sponsor that 5K race. And it's a good way to get your whole organization involved as well as contestants.
Can they physically expand their building?
Physically expand the building? Given that there are other buildings attached, I don't know that those plans are in the works anywhere. Those are owned by other folks, and so we don't have room beyond what we have to expand. further news on that in the future, I guess. But no, I do not believe there are any plans to physically expand the hospitality center. We do try to be courteous here on campus when they have events or needs that require more space. We make all our outdoor space available. I know that there's been partnership in the past between hospitality and the soup kitchen, and so we use the space available to us as best we can to help each other out in providing those services.
Just one thing I'd like to add about the hospitality center. It really needs funding from the county level, and I think we were talking about funding too as well. I think the county and foundations really need to understand that these are grassroots efforts, trying to help people who are terribly in need, sharing data, coming together. But it is a funding issue, and we need to have more of these kinds of conversations. One of the things is like Pottstown, they get together and they talk among themselves, what are they going to do for Thanksgiving and Christmas? Rather than individuals doing it on their own, what do we do corporately together?
Who organizes that in Pottstown?
TCN, the TCN. They're highly organized compared to Norristown, I can only tell you. And it took a long time. Yeah. But that's there. Lisa lives in the Pottstown area, and that sharing of information and working together to not overdo, not to provide too much or too little, but just the right amount.
On that note, why don't we go ahead and move to our last table for reporting?
But in conclusion, we wanted to definitely continue Advocates Against Hunger. Definitely.
I mean, I don't think our table had too much to add outside of what was already discussed, but I think coordination is huge. And, getting together in a coalition format is the first step to kind of make that introduction. But just sitting in a room together doesn't mean we're working together. So really, how do we take these conversations and turn them into action, I think is the biggest thing we're all trying to figure out, and what's each of our unique roles in that. And that's the exciting thing, I think, that's to come.
All right, were there any items that came out of discussion that you heard from other tables that you wanted to address here in the plenary before we break for the day? Bill in the back.
I certainly don't want to be Debbie Downer or any of this other stuff, but
dish it out.
Here's a big thing that I think a lot of our organizations deal with, and that is having enough people either on staff or volunteering to be able to get the day-to-day work done and still be able to attend meetings. It is extremely difficult, and a lot of people here have full-time jobs in addition to all the volunteer work that they do. So, that's the big hurdle that we all deal with. And I know the people that are working for all these organizations, they're getting paid for 40 hours, but I guarantee you a lot of them are working way more than 40 hours. And I know everybody in church world, a lot of them are working part-time, and they're working, 60 hours when they're getting paid for 20. So I think that's like a big thing that we all have to overcome. So, just to put that out there.
I think that's a helpful kind of orienting point of order for our conversation, too. I know in my experience from the pastoral perspective as being a part of these conversations about food insecurity, oftentimes the conversation focuses on coordination between organizations or even like food supply chains. How do we get as much healthy food as we can to all the people that need it? But the infrastructure piece of how do we get volunteers to actually bring food from point A to point B, to serve the food, to intake any other needs folks accessing services may have. That's a piece I think that's lacking from the conversation as well. And I'd be curious if anyone has thoughts on how advocates might be a forum where that kind of coordination can happen. As much as we need to share data, I think we need to share people too. But yeah, thank you, Bill. Anything else?
Advocates meeting. When do you see yourselves coming together and meeting again? We've had, this is a revitalization process, and so we had a January 25th meeting, and it's just now that we're having this follow-up conference for you. So the question is, how often should we be meeting in forums like this? And that's a question we need to ask you.
I just have a quick question. What does everyone see as the goal, and like what would be advocates at the best possible place that advocates could be? Like what is it that we're trying to work towards and create? I mean, maybe it was something that advocates was a certain way prior to the pandemic, and we're trying to get back to that, or the world has changed drastically, and we're trying to kind of find where the Advocates Against Hunger can be of the best and most effective service. I'm just curious kind of what would be the long-term, wow, this is where we've come, level 20 awesomeness that we find ourselves at. I'd just be curious.
And historically, one of the things that advocates started out is we were there thanking the people who provided services. We had conferences and luncheons. We called them network luncheons. And we literally brought like Tammy together and said, thank you. And we had a time where we did that. We had it at our church. And we're a bit of a suburban church. And so we brought it into Norristown, and people started to share where they would have this venue, right? So each group, and I know that Mary Alice, her church sponsored it, Calvary Baptist. So we passed it around through the community as to who was to host it. The Patrician Society, that's how we functioned. And do we go back to that kind of model? And we met probably about 4 times a year where we got together, and then we divided. We had a conference, but we also divided into soup kitchens and different groups so that they could specifically network together. So it's a process of how we network and how do we come to really find solutions and answers to some of these problems. And so that's what we need feedback for. If you agree Advocates needs to continue, are we doing it correctly? Is this just, we see ourselves as a convener. Now we did in the past do food resourcing, and the CADCOM and with Patrick Druhan, we got a food truck, and Advocates paid for fresh produce. Now we have Greener Partners here who have produce. We used to purchase those items and then give it at the library. We would disseminate that food. And all the volunteers came primarily from the faith-based groups that came together and passed that food out. And it was to really pantry-eligible recipients that got that food. But we need to know what you think. How do we do it better? And it's exactly what we want to do. Do we come back together and say, this is what we want to do as a future, rather than not what we did in the past? So that's where we need the direction. And the survey, we really ask you to fill out that survey and give us direction as to where we go. And I've been at this, for 15 years, you guys? And I'm wearing old lady shoes now. My hair is gray. And I'm looking for succession here. There are other people that need to come in who are younger than I am to really lead the charge, because I'm sure you can do a better job in many ways with that connection to the internet and other connections that I don't have. So that's the future for us, is if we believe we're important, then how do we make ourselves relevant?
Are there any further comments before I hand things over to Nanette to close? All right. I think we'll move into closing remarks. I'll go ahead and pass the mic back to Nanette.
see where my. Well, I guess I want to just say thank you for being here. It's an opportunity to work together in the future, and we hope that you can make a commitment to advocates coming to the point where we can make some unsiloed decisions for our communities. We do need you to fill out the survey, so if you'll take a few minutes to do that while you're here, because we want to collect your name tags and your surveys. But I really appreciate the care and the compassion that you all exhibit for our community, and it's so important. So we thank St. John's particularly. Bill, as I said, Bill Rinker had said he would do a tour, and so did Reverend Schwank. He'd do the church, and Bill would do the soup kitchen. So if you would like to do that at the end of, you can go by the door here, and I think Bill can take you around. And this door would be the one for Reverend Schwank for the sanctuary in the church. And I think that's about it. We just thank St. John's very much for providing this fabulous space, and Cheryl Werkheiser for helping to make that possible. And thank you again for being here. And I want to point out Shirley and Dave Beach, a specific thank you from Lower Providence for being here to help with registration and helping with the food. So take care. Thank you.